you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real at the time, and you think, now this is what I mean by actually starting to swim up or downstream with the rest of the salmon, you know, eventually, if you stay here long enough.
Yeah.
You'll find yourself doing that. And you have to, there's a way of doing it without doing it. And I've often felt it. I've sat there and I have felt the knife slipped firmly in between my shoulder blades and tried to have it shoved through the other side through my...
They don't destroy you in Hollywood for nothing. Everyone thought Mel Gibson's fall was self-inflicted, a closed chapter filed under scandal and exile, until an old interview detonates in the middle of a trafficking blockbuster and turns his paranoid suspicions into prophecy. A clipped 1998 conversation surges across feeds, chopped from 24 minutes to barely 3, racking up more than 2.7 million views as promoters frame it as proof he warned about industry demons and betrayal. Within days, his name is spliced into viral accusations, falsely cast as the lead of Sound of Freedom, and dragged into elite family film rumors he publicly denies. Reaction clips surged toward 3 million views, outrage multiplying in real time. He says his worst nightmares were real. He says survival here requires cockroach resilience. If none of it means anything, why does his name keep resurfacing whenever elite exposure trends explode? And why does every denial make the fire spread faster? The clip is not new, but the timing is. It is July, and Sound of Freedom hits theaters on the 4th, dragging trafficking into the mainstream conversation. Within days, a trimmed fragment from a 1998 program titled Hollywood Conversations starts circulating again, cut down from 24 minutes to 3 minutes and 10 seconds, stripped of context, and sharpened for impact. By the time it clears 2.7 million views on Twitter, the framing is already locked in. Mel Gibson did not just reminisce about early career paranoia, he predicted a reckoning. He talks about arriving in Hollywood with weird paranoid suspicions, dismissing them, then realizing later he was exactly on track. He describes betrayal as a knife in the back. He jokes about sensing a cold presence and thinking for a moment of the Antichrist.
When I came over here, I was in my mid-20s.
Right.
The first time I really came over here. You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it.
Then the second wave hits. A YouTube channel with an AI-generated narrator releases a clip claiming Mel Gibson exposed Oprah Winfrey for a questionable action tied to Hollywood elites. The video stitches together his 1998 remarks with a 2019 interview where Oprah discusses abuse survivors in the context of Leaving Neverland. In the splice, it sounds like confrontation. In reality, Gibson never names her. But reality is not the fuel here. The video racks up millions of views before disappearing or going private. Reaction creators amplify it, faces contorted in shock, comment sections erupting. One prominent reaction version approaches 3 million views on its own. The claim inside the clip is specific and explosive, that Gibson stars in Sound of Freedom and pulls back the curtain on elite involvement in trafficking. Both points are demonstrably wrong. That does not slow the spread. Here's where it bends. Gibson's representatives step in. They tell Newsweek he has nothing to do with a 4-part documentary about a global trafficking ring. They clarify he does not star in the film. They confirm he is not collaborating with Tim Ballard beyond promotional support. On paper, this should settle it. Instead, it adds friction. Insiders note that every denial is treated as confirmation by an online ecosystem already primed to believe suppression is underway. The more official channels emphasize he is uninvolved, the more viral captions frame him as muzzled. The numbers keep climbing, 2.7 million views on Twitter, tens of millions when reaction reposts and TikTok fragments are counted. A rumor that he once spoke of elites drinking blood resurfaces, already debunked years ago, yet woven back into the narrative as if it never left. The machinery does not correct itself. Officially, it is an old interview resurfacing because a controversial film is trending. Unofficially, industry watchers say the overlap feels surgical, like someone waited for the right cultural pressure point and pressed play. The surface explanation insists nothing coordinated is happening. Gibson records a short promotional clip urging people to see the film, saying awareness is the first step in eradicating trafficking, and moves on. He is not credited as director, producer, or star. Jim Caviezel plays the lead. Alejandro Monteverde directs. Those are the clean facts. But the clean facts do not explain why the viral caption places "Sound of Freedom" in brackets after Gibson's name, implying deeper involvement. They do not explain why tweets frame him as the real deal who knows something very dark. They do not explain why the 3-minute edit omits the rest of the 24-minute conversation. People close to the publicity cycle say, this is how myth builds: you compress, you isolate, you repeat. Still, compression only works if the raw material already carries voltage. And Gibson's words, even decades later, carry it.
Movies like this, documentaries like this, shows like this, there's a lot of people that don't want to do it because where are you going to platform it? Where are you going to put it up? But if there's a guy that could do it and pull it off, it's definitely Mel Gibson.
It compounds, and the machinery keeps reaching for higher stakes. In early January, a tweet claims Mel Gibson is directing a film about the Rothschild family, striking at what posters call the New World Order. The screenshot says media around the world have declared war on him and want to stop the production and punish him personally. The language is dramatic, conspiratorial, and accusatory. Within hours, it spreads. But there is a problem. The only related project on record is a 2019 dark comedy titled Rothschild, unrelated to the real family, directed by John S. Baird, with Mel Gibson merely offered a role that never materialized. His publicist, Alan Nero, states in an email that he will not be directing and has never intended to direct any film about the Rothschilds. That is the official line. Yet the rumor persists long after the clarification. People close to studio negotiations say the speed with which his name is attached to elite targeting projects is not random. It follows a pattern, one that stretches backward. Mel Gibson's career peaks with Academy Awards, then fractures in 2006 with a high-profile arrest and a drunken rant that stains his public standing. The industry cools, and projects become harder to secure. In 2016, he returns with Hacksaw Ridge and earns an Oscar nomination, signaling partial rehabilitation. But the shadow never lifts entirely. In 2021, news that he will direct a Lethal Weapon installment triggers immediate backlash from critics who remember the earlier controversies. On the surface, these are separate incidents: personal conduct, professional comeback, lingering criticism. In the current narrative, they are retrofitted into evidence. Online commentators insist the timing of his fall, years after he voiced suspicions about Hollywood, is too convenient. Industry veterans counter that his collapse is self-inflicted. Both interpretations now sit side by side, and neither cancels the other out.
Yeah, because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where, for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
Yeah.
Christianity is the one religion where people, all these progressive, open-minded, leftist people, they'll embrace all these different religions until it comes.
Meanwhile, the broader culture is already primed for the idea of gatekeepers. Ice Cube appears on The Breakfast Club in July and says the Illuminati probably exists, describing figures who keep artists in their lane and erect gates when they step out. He accuses the NBA of discouraging sponsors from supporting his Big Three league and says he will go on an F the Gatekeepers podcast tour. He claims networks are encouraged not to air his games. The NBA does not publicly validate this framing, but the allegation circulates. The point is not whether the Illuminati is real. It is that high-profile figures are openly talking about unseen control structures. When Mel Gibson's resurfaced interview collides with this climate, it does not land in a vacuum. It lands in an audience already receptive to the language of suppression and retaliation.
There are big realms, spiritual realms. There's good, there's evil, and they are slugging it out for the souls of mankind. And my question is, why are we even important? Little old flawed humanity, why are we important in that process?
But here is what refuses to settle. In the original 1998 conversation, Mel Gibson laughs at his own paranoia, then later says he realizes he was exactly on track. That phrase becomes the hinge, exactly on track about what, he does not specify. The viral edit removes the surrounding nuance. Snippets of him describing a cold presence walking through a crowd take on symbolic weight. The joke about thinking Christopher Walken is the Antichrist becomes, in clipped form, a literal insinuation. When the full transcript is published by fact-check outlets, it shows context that softens the edges. Yet the softened version does not travel as far as the sharpened one. People close to digital strategy say ambiguity is the most powerful accelerant. It allows audiences to project their own suspicions into the gaps. So the contradiction widens. Officially, Mel Gibson promotes a film about trafficking awareness and says nothing about specific elites. Unofficially, he becomes the avatar of elite exposure. Officially, he is not directing a film about a banking dynasty. Unofficially, posts insist he was threatened to back off. Officially, a viral video misrepresents his role and edits him into accusations he never made. Unofficially, millions accept it as confirmation of what they already believe. The repetition is relentless. Every few years his name reattaches to a narrative about hidden power. Every time, denials follow, and every time, suspicion grows that the denial itself is part of the dance. If this is all coincidence, it is a coincidence that keeps repeating online. If it is not, then the question is no longer whether he warned about something in 1998, but who benefits from keeping that warning alive and unresolved. Below is the edited and corrected version with improved grammar, spelling, punctuation, and clarity. Celebrity names are bolded.
The system is completely based on money. The studio system.
What changes now is not the clip, but the weight it carries. Inside studio circles, Mel Gibson is no longer just a volatile comeback story. He has become a lightning rod that draws every elite exposure rumor into his orbit. Producers who once saw him as bankable prestige begin calculating risk differently. His past controversies stop reading as isolated personal implosions and start being interpreted, by supporters and critics alike, as leverage points. Industry sources say the quiet message is simple: association with him invites noise. Noise affects distribution. Noise affects sponsors. Noise affects international partners who prefer clean headlines. Nobody issues a formal blacklist memo. They do not have to. Meetings slow. Attachments stall. Scripts that once circulated suddenly require more internal discussion. The pressure is subtle, deniable, and effective. And the louder the online narrative insists he is a truth-teller being punished, the more executives fear that working with him looks like endorsing that war.
Doing this with historians as well. You're trying to make it.
Yeah, historical stuff. Well, I regard the Gospels as history. It's a verifiable history. Some people say, "Oh, it's a fairy tale." He never existed, but he did. And there are other accounts, verifiable historical accounts outside the biblical ones, that also bear this out. That yes, he did.
The mythology around him grows in the absence of specifics. Mel Gibson never delivers a manifesto. He never names a cabal. He speaks in metaphors about betrayal and resilience, and that restraint becomes oxygen for projection. Supporters interpret the vagueness as strategic, a sign he understands the consequences of direct accusation. Critics interpret it as irresponsibility, a wink toward conspiracy without accountability. Either way, the ambiguity keeps him suspended between martyr and menace. People close to his camp insist he simply promotes awareness and moves on. Others whisper that he knows exactly how loaded those older remarks are and chooses not to clarify because clarity would deflate the mystique. In a culture where narrative power equals leverage, mystique is currency. The question shifts from what he knows to what he gains by not elaborating. Silence in this climate is not neutral, it is a calculated asset. At the same time, the broader environment is primed for escalation. Public trust in institutions erodes. Social media algorithms reward outrage over nuance. Short edits travel faster than full transcripts. When a familiar face with a turbulent history appears attached to themes of trafficking and elite misconduct, the story practically writes itself in the public imagination. Media outlets publish fact checks and clarifications, but those pieces circulate inside a different bubble than the viral fragments. Insiders who track engagement say outrage posts consistently outperform corrections by a wide margin. That imbalance reshapes reputations in real time. A single resurfaced interview becomes a Rorschach test for cultural anxiety. Mel Gibson's past missteps, once framed as personal failure, are reinterpreted by some as the backlash one expects when challenging powerful interests. The narrative does not need proof. It needs repetition and emotional resonance. Money sits quietly at the center of all this. Sound of Freedom's commercial performance injects real revenue into a story already charged with moral urgency. When a film tied to trafficking awareness succeeds financially, it threatens established pipelines and priorities. Distributors take note. Advertisers take note. Competitors take note. In that environment, any figure perceived as amplifying the film's themes becomes strategically significant. Mel Gibson's promotional support, limited as it may be, places him near the heat source. Industry veterans say it is naive to pretend studios operate purely on artistic merit. Alliances and optics matter. If executives believe a project risks being labeled conspiratorial or incendiary because of its associations, they calculate accordingly. Careers rise and stall on less. The idea that gatekeepers exist does not require secret handshakes, it requires shared incentives, and shared incentives often align against volatility. Below is your text rewritten with corrected spelling, grammar, and punctuation. I also bolded celebrity names as requested.
Institutions as well, but that is a very bad one. And I think it's all part and parcel of the same corruption that crept in. And when you asked what's the difference between pre-Vatican II, so Vatican II happened, and of course they took the church and they reformed it, and they changed things in it. And it didn't necessarily agree with everything that went.
What complicates the picture further is how frequently Mel Gibson's name surfaces in proximity to powerful families and global institutions. Even when projects dissolve or never materialize, each aborted attachment feeds the perception that invisible hands intervene. The 2019 comedy that never became the elite takedown imagined by social media posters still leaves a residue. People ask why it evaporated. They ask why rumors about threats circulate so easily. The official answers remain mundane: scheduling conflicts, financing issues, and shifting creative priorities. But in a landscape already primed for suspicion, mundane explanations struggle to compete. Industry watchers admit that once a figure is branded controversial, every ordinary setback looks strategic. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. The more he denies, the more denial is reframed as pressure. The more projects stall, the more stalling looks like suppression. Reality and narrative drift apart, and narrative usually wins. Then there is the parallel drumbeat from other high-profile figures who speak openly about unseen control. When Ice Cube describes the club of gatekeepers and claims his Big Three league faces quiet obstruction, he normalizes the idea that success is conditional on compliance. His assertion that he is not part of the club echoes across industries. Even if the specifics differ, the emotional through line is the same: step outside prescribed lanes and expect resistance. That sentiment amplifies Gibson's aura without him saying a word. It reframes his older comments about betrayal as part of a broader pattern rather than a singular grievance. The public begins connecting dots between entertainment, sports, media networks, and political messaging. Whether those dots truly align becomes secondary to the fact that people believe they do, and belief shapes behavior, investment, and loyalty in ways facts alone rarely accomplish. The most unsettling element is not any single claim but the feedback loop forming around him. Online communities treat him as a signal flare. Every resurfaced clip, every rumor about a shelved project, every vague remark becomes confirmation that a larger system reacts defensively when challenged. Critics push back, citing context and corrections, which only fuels the sense that institutions rush to protect themselves. Supporters frame him as a reluctant insider who glimpsed something corrosive and paid for it. Neither side relinquishes ground. Meanwhile, he continues working, promoting, and appearing, neither fully embraced nor fully exiled. That liminal status is powerful. It allows him to exist as proof for both camps. If he thrives, it is resilience. If he stumbles, it is retaliation. The ambiguity ensures the narrative never stabilizes.
There was a lot of opposition to it, and I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're going to get people going, because
Of course.
it's big subject matter, and it's like, and my contention is, when I was making it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all men.
Now the stakes extend beyond one actor's reputation. The conversation morphs into a referendum on who controls cultural narratives. If a decade-old interview can be revived and weaponized overnight, what else lies dormant in archives waiting for the right spark? If a promotional appearance can trigger global speculation about elite rituals, how fragile is the boundary between advocacy and accusation? Insiders say studios monitor sentiment daily, tracking how quickly a name shifts from asset to liability. The line moves fast. What begins as a niche controversy can escalate into advertiser anxiety within days. In that climate, caution often masquerades as principle, and principle often bends under financial pressure. Mel Gibson stands at the intersection of all of it: art, controversy, commerce, and conspiracy. The unanswered questions pile up faster than the clarifications. Why does his name magnetize elite narratives even when official ties are thin? Who benefits from keeping his old words circulating without full context? Is he a pawn in a digital economy that monetizes outrage, or a knowing participant who understands the power of suggestion? Are studios quietly steering clear because of moral discomfort, or because the optics threaten international revenue streams? And if gatekeepers are as real as some claim, what happens to those who refuse entry? The pattern refuses to settle into a single explanation. It hovers, charged and unresolved. So here we are, watching a reputation function as both shield and weapon, watching denials spark more suspicion, watching supporters and critics dig trenches around the same set of fragments. Is Mel Gibson a man punished for glimpsing something corrosive, or a figure whose past makes him the perfect vessel for every elite conspiracy in circulation? Is the industry protecting itself from destabilizing narratives, or simply protecting its balance sheets? And if the next rumor attaches to his name tomorrow, will it be coincidence again? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. Pick a side, because this story is not cooling off. It is only tightening.